The most powerful thing you said in that argument was nothing. Not the comeback, not the explanation, not the perfectly worded point you finally made after they'd already stopped listening. The silence. The moment you didn't respond. That was the one thing they had no answer for. The problem is, most of us only manage that silence by accident. Or after we've already said too much. This video is about how to do it on purpose. Think about the last time someone got under your skin. Maybe it was a coworker who took a shot at your idea in front of the whole room, a family member who disguised a criticism as concern, a text that arrived at midnight, calibrated to land exactly where it hurts. You felt it immediately. The heat in your chest, the tightening in your throat, the flood of words forming before you'd even decided to speak. Here's what was actually happening. A structure in your brain called the amygdala, small, almond-shaped, ancient, registered a social threat and fired before your rational mind had a single chance to weigh in. We're talking 12 milliseconds. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for judgment and perspective and not saying things you'll spend 3 days regretting, takes 200 to 500 milliseconds to process the same input. By the time you decided how to respond, your body had already been flooded with cortisol and adrenaline for nearly half a second. Heart rate elevated, peripheral vision narrowed, the calm, measured version of you was offline. Daniel Goleman called this the amygdala hijack. Your brain couldn't tell the difference between a genuine threat and a passive-aggressive comment in a meeting. It treated both the same. You weren't overreacting. You were running on hardware that hasn't been updated in 400 million years. Here's the part American culture gets completely wrong about conflict. We're taught that staying silent means you're a pushover, that if you don't defend yourself, you're basically agreeing, that standing your ground is self-respect, and backing down is weakness. So when someone provokes you, everything in you says, respond, match the energy, show them. But here's what that instinct misses entirely. Most provocations aren't arguments. They're not even really about you. They're requests, specifically, requests for your emotional energy. The frustration, the defensiveness, the moment you finally snap, that's not a side effect of the conflict. For some people, that is the goal. That's what they came for. When you engage, you're not standing your ground, you're filling their order. The person in the room who stays completely calm isn't losing. They're the only one who actually understands what's happening. In 2012, a woman named Skylar published a blog post about how she'd survived years of manipulation. She wasn't a therapist, wasn't a researcher, just someone who had finally found something that worked and needed to put a name to it. She called it the gray rock method. The idea: make yourself as uninteresting and unremarkable as possible. One-word answers. Flat tone. No emotional charge to grab onto. A gray rock. Indistinct. Unremarkable. Not worth the effort. It spread because it worked. But what Skylar didn't explain, and in what most people still don't know, is the specific psychological mechanism behind why it works. The principle is behavioral extinction. Behaviors that stop producing a reward eventually stop occurring. When provocation consistently fails to generate a reaction, it loses its reinforcement. Over time, without fuel, maybe it fades. But here's the piece that trips everyone up. Before it fades, it spikes. Psychologists who study operant conditioning call this an extinction burst. When a behavior that used to reliably produce a reward suddenly stops working, there's a predictable escalation before the decline. They push harder, say something worse, escalate in ways specifically designed to make you break. Because their brain is running a simple calculation. The old strategy isn't working, so more of it might. This is the moment most people conclude the method is failing. It isn't. The burst is the system recalibrating. The spike comes right before the drop. If you hold through it, the behavior collapses. If you react, even once, even slightly, The cycle resets. The reaction confirms that escalating works. And the threshold for future escalation just got lower. So what does gray rock actually sound like in a real conversation? A coworker undermines your idea in front of everyone. Old response? Defend the idea, get visibly flustered, spend the next 2 hours replaying it. Gray rock response? Interesting. Flat. Brief. Move on. You're not conceding anything. You're refusing to perform. A family member says the thing they always say, the one you can feel coming before it lands. Old response? Engage, explain, justify, watch it escalate into the same argument you've had 30 times. Gray rock response? Okay. A nod. Change the subject or say nothing. You don't owe anyone a reaction just because they share your last name. Someone sends a message designed to provoke. Online, by text, in a comment thread. The read receipt is already showing. Old response? Type. Gray rock response? Don't. Or if you respond at all, one word, no defense, no explanation, nothing that can be argued with. The specific phrases aren't magic. Interesting. Okay. Sure. Silence. What they share is that none of them provide a ledge. There's nothing to grab onto, no thread to pull. One thing worth saying clearly. This is for navigating emotional manipulation in everyday relationships. Coworkers, family, people you have to be around regularly. If you're in a situation involving physical danger or real abuse, the calculation is entirely different. Your safety comes before any communication strategy. That's not a footnote. That's the whole point. There's a specific kind of person who ends up watching something like this. You don't lose your temper often, but today you did. Or this week or last month, and you haven't been able to let it go. Not because of what they said, because of what you said back, because you knew what was happening. You could see the whole thing playing out in real time, and you reacted anyway. That's not a character flaw. That's an amygdala doing exactly what it was built to do. It doesn't distinguish between a predator and a passive-aggressive email. It treats both as emergencies. The goal isn't to stop feeling it. You'll feel it. The cortisol will show up on schedule. The heat will come. What changes, that's with practice, is the gap between the trigger and the response. Just enough space for your prefrontal cortex to get a vote. Not every room deserves your full emotional presence. Not every provocation deserves your best words. Some people only deserve a gray rock. And here's the thing nobody tells you about staying calm when someone is working hard to destabilize you. It doesn't feel like winning in the moment. It feels like restraint. It feels unresolved. But you'll sleep tonight, and they'll spend the evening wondering why it didn't work this time. The most powerful thing you can say in some arguments is nothing. You already knew that. Now you know how to do it on purpose.